Elan, would you like to introduce yourself and your work, just so people have a sense of that?
Hmm. First of all, I'm intimidated by speaking with a native speaker. I always like,
Oh,
whoa, this is English. So I'm Berlin based. I'm a body worker, and I was deeply in in-person retreats before Corona hit all of us. And then I was jumping with the whole stuff to the internet as well. And I can try to introduce my work. And it's so difficult, and I don't want this to be a long part, but I feel obsessed with somatic research in order to truly get a sense in my own life and for as many people and nervous systems around of how amazing we are and how powerful and how much we are energies of such an amount of aliveness and gratitude and happiness, coming from a place where I study trauma in a collective and individual way, having a deep sense of kind of distant to where we are now. So also me quickly mentioning I was deeply in in-person retreats and now jumped with all of the stuff to the internet. To some extent, it's not a stuff. It's not a jump. It's me translating the individual nervous system trauma signature and the individual nervous system's needs around safety and understanding in order to heal. Translating that to the collective level. That's all. There is no difference. There's to some extent nothing new. We are just talking about the nervous system of mankind. And we are talking about the nervous system of the internet as a reflection of the nervous system of mankind. And this is especially where my research is focusing on at the moment, because I think we didn't tap into the treasure of this potential. And even though nobody might say I'm right, I still think I'm right. So I'm a researcher. And the more people laugh about me, the more I'm like, oh, I'm onto something. Woo!
yeah.
Because why? Why should somebody belittle me? Why should somebody laugh at my thesis if there is not something that would shake the grounds? And I'm all about shaking grounds. All about shaking grounds. All breakthroughs in my healing. All breakthroughs out of desperation, numbness, chronic fatigue, whatever I went out of in my life, came from shaking my grounds as brutally as possible. And before I allow you to speak as well, Philip, I just want to say that besides admitting that I somehow forced you to record that as well, no, I felt very attracted to your, I do not know so much about your content of teaching, but the way you teach embodies a rage and an urgency, and at the same time, in this urgency, a regulation within the amount of pain on a collective and individual level and global and ecological level that attracts me. There is something in this. This is about something. We are alive. We are burning. And this is something I'm all about, this kind of, let's warm up again our passion for life. And this is something that made you, in my perception, remarkable, because I can compare you to so many others where it's all about a method or sharing or knowledge. And I think it's not about knowledge, it's about energy that makes us waking up. That provides us the grace of reawakening. It's both. It's shaking the ground with brutality and radical love.
It's beautifully said. Beautifully said. So for those who aren't familiar with my work, it's based on a lifetime of inquiry. I've written 2 books. New Self, New World was my first. Radical Wholeness is my second. And when people ask which book should I start with, I always suggest starting with Radical Wholeness, because it's an easier entree into the work. And what is my work? I love the way you talk about the necessity for brutality and the necessity for radical love, both at the same time. My work entirely conforms to that marriage of complementary opposites. The brutality in my work is really as clear and uncompromising a look at our culture and the ways in which our culture inhibits our responsiveness, deadens us to our reality. Eventually, our culture puts us in our heads so that the body is this sort of source of noise below the neck that we would do well to ignore until it starts screaming, and then we go to fix it. And our relationship with the body is such a top-down relationship, and that is the primary relationship in our lives, our relationship with our body. And so you look beyond the body at our relationships with the world around us, with our plans, with our lives, and it all comes back to the prototype of our relationship with the body. All we know is this top-down relationship that obscures sensation and patterns our responses. And so we wonder, why do we feel alienated? Why do we feel estranged? Why do we feel disconnected? Well, because fundamentally we have disconnected with our own bodies, and the body processes more than 1 billion times more information than we can be consciously aware of. And you can never, it's folly to think you can somehow objectively know all that information. It's impossible. You just can't. But you can feel it. You can feel your body's responsiveness to the world. And what happens as we begin to disencumber the body of those stifled patterns is that its energy is able to come into coherence. Because the way we live in this top-down modality, we are shattered. We can be rational, we can think with the head, or we can feel from the heart, but it's either or. It's a binary, this or that. They don't go together. How can you feel from the heart and be analytical at the same time? In our culture, we don't do that. We don't feel a gut instinct in accord with the heart. We don't feel the intelligence of the legs in union with the intelligence of the head. It's compartmentalized and shattered. And so to unlock our bodies is to at the same time release those compartmentalized sources of intelligence into union, into a dance where they cohere into wholeness. And when you surrender bit by bit to your experience of wholeness, you open your eyes on the world and you feel its wholeness. And there is no separation between the two. Your wholeness is held by the world's. And then you feel the guidance of the world. And that's where the joy is. That's how we can move forward, is if we begin to harmonize with the world around us and heed its guidance in a state of humility. And I really think, the word humility shares the same root as the word human. And there's something very important in there. And the same root is shared with the word humus, which means earth. So earth, humility, and human, they come back to the same root. And we have for thousands of years believed in our own arrogance, that we are separate, that we are superior, that we are entitled to dominate. And it's the way we dominate the body. It's that same impulse that we carry over to the world around us. So, sorry, this is longer than I was expecting, but my work is, I've developed practices, and there are over 100 of them, and each practice is a way of encountering a limitation within the body's neurology and feeling it and softening into it so that the limitation turns into a choice. So it's never, you should feel this. It's more, do you have the choice? Or is it, are you depriving yourself of choice, which is what happens with the enculturation of the body by the society in which we live. And there's a gentleness and a simplicity to all of my practices. And that's, when you speak of the necessity for safety, it's just that. It's just, the body is mostly water. Can you begin to feel it as a fluid medium? And because the body is fluid, each breath is a wave that travels through the whole of it. You can feel the wave descend to the soles of your feet, to the top of the head, to your fingertips. And you begin to come into an accommodation of all the diverse and wondrous and charged attunements that the body is capable of. I've got a metaphor for the body. Can I share my metaphor with you?
Yes.
So,
it's the ocean.
Different. I think the body is primarily a resonator. So I think the body is like a bell, and I'm pulling out a bell because I have this gorgeous bell, and when the body attunes to the present and to the world, it rings, and you feel that. And what makes that resonance possible is the space inside the bell. And in our culture, what we've done is we've stuffed that spaciousness full of anxieties and stress and tension and expectation. So the present, it's still going like this the whole time, but we don't feel it. All we feel is the self. So it's like our attention goes into this black hole of self-consciousness and tries to win and tries to succeed. So if we can gently integrate and release those bound energies, then once again, we discover the world that holds us in every moment.
It's still such a beautiful metaphor for such a sad story. I mean, at least the first part of the story.
Yeah.
And then it's pretty glamorous what you put inside of the resonator. I mean, it's like, okay, it's a metaphor. To be honest, it's merely, it is so painful, so much suffering. Yes. But the second part of the book has a happy end. I got it. Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Yeah. What I love so much about many things. So I won't be the one, hopefully, to decide where to go from the richness that you share. But there is something of, I developed 100 practices in order to remember the own design of being a resonator and being walking presence. And I love that to some extent the richness is an overabundance or might be overwhelming when somebody is listening to you, and at the same time there are practices, and I think this is incredibly important because we bath in so much information and wisdom around, especially in the era of the internet. We can quote the Dalai Lama and the biggest teachings of Buddhism and mysticism, etc., and we do not have a path towards that. And by that lack, we do not have access to, they are talking about me.
Yeah.
They are talking about me. And this is something that where I think the structure of, let's say, 100 practices, which is not so much. I mean, 100 cheeseburgers, 100 practices. Come on, it's not so much. There is a structure from the outer world, leading me deeper, inviting me deeper, falling in love again with my inner world. adding a path of energy to all the information that we accumulated. And if there is only information and we are burnt out / without energy, we are still this resonator being full with another kind of material. That's the same.